So my name is Jon Witt, and this is a movement class. It's a basic class in fundamentals and how to get up and down from the floor. So I have a rolled up mat, and that's for elevated heels for a couple different things. I mean, you could use just about anything like books. A yoga block is good, but it's probably going to be a little bit too high and a little bit too unstable. So you'll need it for some things, but maybe not everything. But I want to give people some basic things that they can work up to. And then as things get easier, then you can do more complex things. So this particular class was really based in handstands. And I'll still use handstands periodically, and I'll use it today. But I think a little bit more wide-ranging practice is really beneficial for anybody. So it's good to work up to a handstand and have a handstand practice, but it's also, in my opinion, just as important to be able to get down on the ground and get up, and that's why I'm teaching this class. But I'm going to change the classes week by week as I get more and more feedback from you. So you could let me know anything that you'd like to see or practice. And when it's shorter like this, I'm going to make it stronger, not as much spread out. So if you need to take breaks, of course, you could always take breaks. It's not going to be like a boot camp type of class, but it's going to help build up a stronger practice for yourself. So I'm going to start with my feet just about the width of my hips, and I'm going to be moving my pelvis side to side. So I'm just moving it in an angle in terms of like twisting the body. So move really slow. You don't have to move as quick as I am. Quick is not dangerous or anything like that, but you want to be moving at your own kind of pace or capacity. But I'm going to include the arms. So I'm moving my pelvis to move my arms in space. Just a really basic warm up. But as I'm turning my pelvis, you'll notice that it's turning my torso and it's moving my arms as I'm in this motion. But it's good, say you have some tight shoulders, you have a difficult time moving your pelvis. This is very, very good for walking. So it's something you could do before you walk, after you walk, right? It's a cool down. But just try to get the pelvis to move, again, the torso. So when I teach this to people, their torso moves, but their pelvis doesn't move. Or their pelvis moves and their torso or their arms don't move. And you have to start somewhere. So if it's not moving as I'm describing, it's a starting point. So I'm just coming back into the middle, and then as I'm back in the middle, I'm just going to be moving my pelvis down and then sticking my butt out. So tucking the tailbone down and then sticking it out and then bringing it down and then bringing it up. So the reason I'm doing this today is when you're squatting, we're going to squat today, is you want either the tailbone to be down. Some people are really going to be better off with that. And some people you can let it relax and you can round your back. So just be in a tuck position and see what that's like in a standing position. And you might be like, oh yeah, this is actually really good. And this is a big part of the handstand, is getting the pelvis underneath you. But just let it hang out, like stick your butt out and then bring it back down. So I'm going to come into the first squat. So when I'm squatting, I'm going to have my heels elevated. So my feet are a little bit wider than my shoulders, and I'm squatting down. And then as I'm squatting down, I'm going to be moving the weight around, because one side's going to be more difficult. So one ankle will be more mobile, will have more dorsiflexion. And then if you lean to that side, always at some point that leg will start to fall asleep. So what you can do is you can lean into the opposite foot when you can handle it. So in some ways my right side's better than my left, in some ways my left side's better than my right. So it's depending on the position, but I'm just kind of moving the weight around. And then as I'm here, right, because the heels are elevated, it's a little bit easier to be more in the pelvis being more, or the pelvis being more level, so that the lower back is more neutral. Again, it's not bad to round your back, but it may be better off for you to extend it up. Like I'm extending more from my pubis, and that's helping me to elevate from my lumbar. So just take a few deep breaths, and say your legs are burning, right? You need to come out, you just come out. But I'm going to come into a standing forward bend. And then in a standing forward bend, I'm just going to have my feet just as they are, but forward now. And then as I'm here, I'm trying to pull my legs into my chest. So a big part of folding in half in positions is really getting the hip flexors to be stronger. In yoga, it's often used of like lifting the sit bones. You can certainly do that, but you don't want to do it all the time, and you don't want to do it so much that, you know, it's creating an imbalance, right, or an injury. But I'm going to roll myself up into a standing position so that as I'm standing, I'm just going to step off that roll and just see how you are standing. So maybe getting the tailbone to come underneath you a little bit more, getting the legs to be stronger and more straight, seeing how you can balance the weight within the feet. So I'm going to go back onto the roll, and I'm going to do some squats, with the heels elevated. And I'll do a few that are partial range of motions, and that's probably what you might want to start with if you have a hard time coming up and down. So with squatting, it's either the range of motion or it's the lack of strength. So if you need more conditioning, I think that should be more part of your practice. Even though, let's say it's not yoga, it might actually help you more, right? So my feet are about the width of my shoulders. I'm going to squat down to just a healthy level of my knees and then coming up. So this is really simple, but it really targets the quads, right? So if you have a hard time coming up and down from the floor, like I said, it might be strength. But as I'm coming up, I'm coming down, having some rhythm to it. And then if it's okay, I'm going to squat lower. Not that this is better, right? Coming down, and might not be the right height. Right? The heels might need to be higher. They might need to be lower. So as I'm coming down, I'm coming up, coming down, bringing myself back up, coming back down, coming back up, down, down, down. And you want your legs, not that it's about gassing them or getting them really tired, but it's part of reconditioning, right? So I'm just going to do a few more and then up. And if you did them quicker, that has benefits too. Slower might be better, right, initially. Back up. And then down, there might be some cracking or, as long as it's not associated with pain, I think you're okay in terms of your knees. So I'm going to keep that roll just because I'm going to use it again, but I'm going to come down on my hands and my knees. So when I'm coming down on my hands and my knees, I'm just going to move the weight around a little bit. So I'm just moving just to adjust the hands, the wrist. Right? I'm going to roll in a circular motion just to get the wrist to be a little bit more in flexion. And I'm going to go back to the other side. Right? And then as I'm going around, right, I'm just trying to find what area my hand needs to be adjusted, or part of my wrist. So I'm going to do some scapular push-ups. You're going to come up into a plank position. And in plank, right, I'm just going to let the chest move down in between the arms and then pushing through, right? So the arms stay straight and then you're pushing up out of that, right? So I'm going to try to do 10. Maybe you're only doing 5, right? So bringing the chest down, pressing it up, back down, up, back down, bring it back up. Right? Really good for, obviously, the core. You could bring yourself down, up, back down, back up, back down again, back up. One more time down, and then one more time up. So I'm going to walk my hands back towards my feet. So I'm coming back into a forward bend, but as I'm here, again, I'm trying to get the legs, so pulling the knees into the chest, which again will help you in squatting, right? So I'm getting the knees into the chest, pulling the abdomen in, and then I'm going to walk it forward. And then as I'm walking it forward, I'm in down dog, back, right? Pushing through the hands, and from the scap push-ups, you should feel a little bit stronger in pushing. So I'm going to walk forward, and then as I walk forward,
I'm going to step my feet onto the roll. So the front of my foot's on the roll, and I'm here in this forward bend. I'm going to move the weight forward into the front of the feet, so expose the calf muscles a little bit more. And same thing with what I was saying about squatting with the heels elevated. This might be too high, but then again, it might be too low. So you got to find the right height. But as I'm here, I'm really working on getting my legs closer to my chest, right? And then I'm going to walk it back out. And then I'm coming down now. I want you to come back into the squat again, but have your heels elevated. If you don't need your heels elevated, you're back into a low level squat where the heels are down. And we'll be here for a minute or close to a minute. But when you're here, just kind of feel the weight around in terms of where you need the weight. And again, you can avoid bringing weight into one foot. That's what you really need. But then over time, right, you can really get weight into that opposing side. There's many ways to squat, but I find if people just spent more time just squatting in, like we are here, you can really see things. If I'm always moving, I'm always adjusting, that has its place, right? But just simply squatting, you might be like, you'll really understand why it is difficult for yourself. Again, heels up, perfectly good to do. You have about 15 more seconds. And you know, if I had to, I could lift one heel up, right? This isn't cheating. It's just, that's what you need. You might need to move around a little bit more initially, and then you can be static. Static is not better. It's just a byproduct that you'll eventually get, have an easier time in this. So come back into a forward fold. As you're in a forward bend, right? I'm just gonna move the weight around where my hands are off to the side, and then bringing it to the other side. So back into this forward position, pulling the abdomen in. And then I'm coming back into the middle, and I'm gonna slowly roll myself up. As I'm rolling up, I'm back into a standing position. So go back into practicing the tailbone down, scooping up or lifting through the pubic bone, and then stick it out a little bit, and then bring it back down. So the tailbone's moving down, the pubic bone's up, just in a basic standing position. So I'm gonna come back onto my hands and being back into more of a position that's gonna help in strengthening the hands. So there's just heel raises. So I'm coming here where the weight is forward, and I'm gonna lift the heels of my hands off the floor. My thumbs are up, but the heels are lifting. So just getting stronger through the hands. So when we're walking up the wall, you'll have the strength to walk back, right? You'll be able to push yourself. If the weight's back here, this is much easier. Not that it's wrong. It's just, if you can, you want to be more forward. You want your shoulders over your hands, your wrists. You're going to do 3 more. So lifting and lowering, lifting and lowering, lifting back up and lowering. Last time lifting up, and then bringing it back down. So come back up into plank and see the difference. So lift up into plank, pull back through the abdomen, broaden out the shoulders, right? Get your legs involved, front of your legs, the back of your legs. Pull back up into a down dog, and you can pedal it out. So you can move back through the hips. I'm gonna come forward and through a couple of times into an up dog. So moving through my arms, back up into a down dog, coming forward, coming through into an up dog. Lift more through the pubis if you feel it more within your lower back. And then go back up into a down dog. So come back down on the knees, have the toes tucked, and sit back on the heels. So sitting back on the heels, right, in an upright position if we can, then coming back down, but having the feet in a more flat position like a child's pose. Then coming back where the toes are tucked, sitting back on the heels, bringing yourself up into an upright position. So I'm going to come, if I can, I'm going to bring my knees up off the floor, right? Lifting my hips off my heels, bringing myself back up, right? So coming up might actually be easier for you to come up and down. So if I couldn't come down, right, I couldn't slowly come down, you could come down from the bottom position, right? So I'm coming down, slowly coming down, holding a wall if I need to, right? Over the heels,
back on the knees. You could pat it up and coming back down, sitting back on the feet, right? Tucking the toes, lifting the knees, bringing yourself back up, and then all the way up. So I'm going to do it individually, which might actually be easier, depends on the person. So one foot is forward and one foot slightly back, right? So I'm here, squatting down onto the heel, but then I'm going to come back up. Just going to do a few of these, again, just more for conditioning of the legs. As you get stronger, coming up and down will be much easier. So I'm coming down, bringing myself back up, coming down. That knee could technically touch the floor. I know that's hard for some people. You can leave it up. So I'm coming up. Then I'm going to switch my stance so my right foot is back, and then I'm bending. And maybe this is your stance, right? Maybe you're not coming all the way down, but I'm coming down, which is a really, really good stretch for the feet. You'll see like one foot might have a harder time with this. I'm coming up, slowly coming down, right? Bringing myself back up, and then slowly coming down. Right, just again, you might favor one toe more than the other. Not that all the weight has to be even, but over time it's not going to be as twisted in the toes, right? But I'm coming back up, and then when I come up, and I come into a horse stance, which will help with the squat. So I'm turning the feet out, I'm bending the knees, I'm pushing my thighs apart, and say like you're sitting low, you can only hold it for so long, you just come up, right? Like static holds, like, again, definitely have their place, but I'm bringing the tailbone down and I'm lifting through the pubis. You know, arms could be out to the side if you want to, right? And then bringing myself up and then bringing my arms down. One more time, I'm going to sit down into it, pushing the legs apart, getting my knees apart, getting myself to be more upright, and then coming back up and then bringing the arms down. So turning the feet in. So I'm going to come down into a seated position, but to come down, you can squat down, right? You could bring one hand to the side, you could sit down. So I'm going to be in a 90-90 stretch, so my knees are off to the side, and I'm coming forward. So all these little parts may contribute to why you can't squat, why you can't sit in some of the classic positions in yoga, or just posturally speaking. But I'm coming forward just to expose the back of my hip. And I'm coming up. I'm going to come forward one more time. As I come into it, I've said this before in other classes, you'll feel a pretty sizable stretch. So there's real value going into it, and you could certainly hold it. You could also come out of it and go back into it. Right? I'm going to lift the knees, taking the knees over to the opposite side so that I'm coming forward. I'm going to come forward over my left leg, trying to keep my back straight. And a good thing that can help you is think that your left leg is lifting into your chest. So it lifts into your chest, you're going to expose more of your hip and more of your back. Coming up. Again, you want to stay longer, you stay longer. So I'm coming forward. And of course, you can use your hands, bringing myself up and bringing myself forward and down. And then I'm coming up. Now I'm going to lift my knees. I'm going to transfer the weight into my right hand and come into a squat. Then bringing the weight into my right hand and sitting down. So taking the knees to the left and taking the knees up. Bringing the weight into my left hand and sitting back up into the squat. Bringing my left hand back behind me and squatting down. So maybe it's better to just hold the position statically, but as they get better and easier, then I can move around in these positions, right? Not that it's easy to do, but I'm bringing my right knee in. I'm taking my left knee in, right? More internal rotation. And it's nice to do some of the motion rather than all of it. So if I'm coming into it, I'm learning how to bring the knee in, I'm learning to push the knee out. So I'm going to take my right hand back behind me, I'm going to sit down, bring my left hand back down. Then I could come up where I'm coming up with both hands, right? Back up into a squat. So the hands back behind me, I'm going to sit down, and then coming back up into the squat. So the motion of it or moving into it may actually help you more. So if you're, say you've done long hold squatting, it's helped to a certain degree. Maybe the motion could be an additional thing that you can use, right? I'm going to come into a forward fold. So as I'm folding forward, I'm going to have one leg straight and my right heel is elevated. So my left leg is straight, my right leg is into my chest. Then I'm elevating my left heel and my right leg is straight, and elevating the left heel and elevating the right heel and the left heel is down. So I'm just kind of working out the back of the legs. And the better the pike position is, the better the handstand will be. So maybe you can squat down again. So just take 3 deep breaths. I'm just using this more as a test here now, right? And I'm going to turn just so that I'm on my hands. So when I'm on my hand, I'm going to do one more set of the scapular push-up. So when I'm pushing, I want to widen up the shoulder blades. And just for a moment, what you'd be doing in a handstand is shoulders up towards the ears, expressing up through the arms, and the scapula starts to move out, right? Hands turn out. When you're doing scapular push-ups or when you're doing push-ups, right, just to save the wrist, hands out a little bit, it's a very good thing to use. So when I come up into plank, I'm really hollowing out through the front of the body, right? Pushing through the hands. I'm going to relax down through the chest, and then I'm pushing. And I'm going to relax back down, and then I'm pushing up, bringing my chest down in between my hands, back up to the top, letting it come down, back up. I'm going to do 3 more. So letting the chest move down, back up, push, 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 letting it come down, pushing back up. One more time, let the chest so the arms are straight, and then back up to the top, and then holding the top position, and then coming back down. So have the knees underneath you like we did before. Sit back on the feet, right? And then sit back where you're sitting now on my feet, just in a classic virasana. So I'm going to, just so you can see this a little bit better, and just all these, I've said this before in more basic classes, is when you need to move out of pose or come out of a pose, that's a beautiful thing that you're realizing that you need to move. It's not bad, but you want to go into positions that are difficult for yourself. And as you do that, over time, it'll get easier. I'm going to shift my weight into my right foot and then bringing my left leg forward. So I'm just in the seated position, right? Transferring the weight into my right. So my left leg is up to the left. And then I'm bringing my left leg in, and then I'm sitting back on my feet. So I'm going to transfer the weight into my left foot. And then here. But if I was doing a class and I just saw someone was just really struggling, right, I think it's so much better to just sit statically. Shifting the weight into the left foot, extending the right leg out to the right, then sitting back down on the feet. And like I said, it's really going to help in adjusting the tissues. And it's the tissues that are tight or weak. And that's what contributes to why, you might not be able to sit in these positions for a long period of time, right? But come into where your hands are forward, and let's say you can't do a handstand today. I always like to give this as I'm pushing through the hands, I'm lifting the hips up off the floor, right? And then I'm coming back down. I'm going to do 5 of these. So back up with the hips, push down through the hands, pull in with the abdomen, coming back down with the knees, pushing back up on the tops of my feet, coming back down. One more time, coming up, and then coming back down. Now stretch out the backs of your hands. So the backs of my hands are into the floor. And you can move the knees back a bit, but just move the weight into the hands and manipulate the hands by rocking back a bit and forward. It's really a small motion, but like I said, the motion will help in producing more space in the wrists, right, and in the forearm. So then I'm going to come back where I'm in down dog. I'm going to lift up into plank, coming up into plank, hollowing up through the front of my body, and then taking it up into a down dog, or into down dog. But I'm in down dog,
I'm trying to get my shoulders up towards my ears, just for the purpose of handstands. Not that you'd be doing down dog like that, right? But shrug, lift the shoulders up to the ears like you're like, I don't know. And that's what you're doing, initially in learning the handstand. Walk the feet forward, middle of your mat, walk your hands back towards your feet, and purposely round your back and roll yourself up to standing. So I'm going to do a shoulder stretcher, opener for your shoulders, and that'll help with handstands just in general. It's a very good thing to do. And then we'll get into some wall walks, right? I'll do a couple sets of that. But the combination, I think, like I said before, is it'll be more well-rounded in terms of practice. So my hands are a little bit lower than my chest, or a little bit lower than my shoulders, and I'm stepping back, and that I'm bringing the weight into my chest and in my shoulders. So it's like down dog, but there's more weight coming down because of the angle, and that'll help get you into a better overhead position. So as I'm here, turning the hands out, so if it's really difficult, your feet are too far back, right? So you're like, I don't like this is too much. Your feet are too far back. So you're like, I don't necessarily know if I'm doing it right. Try to get the tailbone to move down and the abdomen to move in and get more weight into the shoulders and into the chest. So take 3 deep breaths here. Move it in, move it out. And then walk the feet forward towards the wall and the arms are down. So if you can't walk up to the wall, I'm going to have my chest to the wall. I'm going to walk my feet up. It's a very good way of building up conditioning in the hands, the arms. But you could be in plank and walk back to your feet. That's a much easier version, but that's a great way. If you really want to get up the wall, you put in the work on the floor, you'll be able to get up on the wall. It's just maybe today's not the day, right? But I'm coming down, my hands are turned out. I'm going to take 1 foot up the wall, and then I'm walking back to the wall with my hands, and then I'm not incredibly close to the wall. I'm probably about 6-8 inches away from the wall, but I'm really keeping the ribs in, and then I'm going to walk back out, right? And then coming back down. So I'm down, I'm going to go back up. So as I go up, I'm taking my hands back, right? Getting my feet together, keeping trying to get my ribs in more, scooping the tail, walking back out, and coming back down. So when you are going up, if you get trapped, obviously don't just force yourself. I wish it was just that simple. Just go back and do the reps, do the time, everything will be great. You just might have to know how much range you're actually able to do, and you'll be able to go up more. I'm going to do it a few more times. I'm going to go back up. Push. Keep the ribs in, push to the hands, push to the fingertips. Walk it back out. Come back down. Right? And maybe you're done, but I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to do a couple more. So back up. Coming back down. Last one. Back up. Push through the hands. So ribs are in, legs are strong, back out, and then back down into the squat. So as you're squatting, like I said earlier, you may want to get more rounded through your back, or you may want to extend more. And say squatting's always hurt your back. Like we did earlier, having the heels up in more of a crouch position. You think that's better for yourself? Absolutely do that. But I'm more, again, extension, just so that I am not in my lower back so much. So when you're doing this type of work,
Initially, you'll probably need a big chunk of time to rest, like say 5 minutes even. But as you get stronger and more conditioned, the rest time would be shorter. So when I do this, I usually rest about 60 seconds and then I go right back up. But then in doing it, kind of like this class, it's becoming a shorter class. It'll help get you into being a bit stronger, where you feel like you're able to eventually do a handstand in the middle of the room. And it's part of why I'm teaching this class. But I'm going to sit back down, and then as I sit down, I'm going to have my right knee back in. I'm going to come forward over my left leg like we did earlier. Try to pull the knee into the chest. Bringing yourself up, taking the knees to the right, and then bringing myself forward, bringing myself down, and then bringing myself up. So I want to give people an outlet so you can work more on your hips, more on your squat. If you don't want to go up one more time, I'm going to do one more wall walk, but I'm going to hold it for time. I'm just going to go up and I'll hold it for about 30 seconds, but eventually just keep working 30 seconds, but more sets. 30 seconds might be a lot for you. It could even be 15 seconds, but the total time you could get it to be 5 minutes, but then you would have more sets, right? So as I go back and I go up, I'm just gonna try to hold it at the wall as best as I can, just so that you're working more on the alignment of it. So when you go back up, you can take one foot up, walk it back up. Okay. And then as you back up, you're going to keep the ribs in. Really, really pushing through the hands to the fingertips. And when you're pushing really strong, you'll most likely burn out faster. So that's okay. It's just as you get stronger, then that burnout won't happen as quick. So take 3 more breaths. Move the weight around if you need to. And then walk the hands back out. And bringing your feet back down so that you're back down into a lower position, a squat or a crouch. Right? Just come into a seated position. And then in a seated position, just turn your chest, turn your torso to the left. So just turning the body, not so much the head, which has a different effect. Technically twisting less, but you're twisting more because it's more specific in moving the tissues that surrounds the spine. The left hand could be down, then turning the body, keeping the chin in level with the chest. And then as you're here, like I said, you resist turning the head more, just getting more of a rotation in the torso more specifically. And like I said, you'll get more out of your twist. I'm just going to take the left hand into a fist. I'm going to pull the hand back just to stretch out the wrist, the forearm. Right? Maybe better than what we do on the floor sometimes. So take a couple deep breaths here. And bringing the left arm down and then taking the right arm back. Pulling that hand back. Exposing the wrist, the forearm. A few deep breaths. And then bringing the right hand down. So I hope that class helped you. Like I said, I'm keeping it shorter so that it's a little bit stronger and a little bit more outside of your boundaries. And then as it gets easier, of course, then these practices can be longer. But I get emails from people and people say, "Oh, I'm just so out of practice." Right? Make it shorter but more concentrated and stronger. In my opinion, that's better. And you can still progress. You can still get a better practice from that, as opposed to doing always the same thing. You always do the same thing. Most likely you're not going to grow so much, and you might get a repetitive injury from that. So there's repetition in any practice, of course, but changing the practices is why I'm changing this classes. So it's giving you a more diverse experience. So you can let me know how it goes. You can send me a comment. You could like, subscribe, and then by subscribing, you would know when these videos are uploaded. My live classes are on my YouTube channel, so if you're not a subscriber, you could subscribe. All right, I have a class over the weekend tomorrow, and that's a 30-minute class, and that's more on manipulating the spine. That's a great class. That'll be 30 minutes. And then Sunday I have a class, and that's through Zoom, and that's a 9:30 class, and that's a yoga class. It's a Hatha yoga class. All right, take care.